Welcome to your personal deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at social anxiety. And to help us out, we're going to be using the book Social Anxiety for Dummies by Laura Johnson. And we're going to try to figure out, what are those common fears? What are those thought patterns that get us into trouble? And maybe even those coping mechanisms that might actually hold us back. Expert speaker, you've helped so many people navigate this whole social anxiety thing. What do you think is the biggest myth about it?
You know, it's interesting how many people think social anxiety is just being shy or introverted. The book makes it clear that it's not. It's clinically significant distress. It has a real impact.
That's such a good point. And the book really digs into that fear of judgment and humiliation that kind of sits at the core of social anxiety, which of course affects how we see ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, and often leads us to just avoiding things altogether.
Right. And it's that avoidance that actually strengthens the anxiety over time. It becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. One thing I thought was really useful is how the book distinguishes between social anxiety, performance anxiety, and then avoidant personality disorder.
So is performance anxiety like stage fright basically a subset of social anxiety?
Exactly. It's that fear of being evaluated specifically when you're performing. Avoidant personality disorder, though, is a much broader pattern of avoidance that impacts most relationships. Whereas social anxiety might be more limited to specific situations. Just as an example, someone who's terrified of public speaking, that's social anxiety, and more specifically, it's performance anxiety. But if they're avoiding pretty much all social gatherings, that might suggest a broader issue like avoidant personality disorder.
Okay, that distinction makes total sense. Now, the book also talks about this cycle where negative thoughts and those core beliefs trigger the social anxiety. Then you have all these reactions, and those actually reinforce those initial beliefs.
Absolutely, and it just spirals. One example from the book that really stuck with me is someone who's convinced they're going to blush when they have to give a presentation, so they just avoid presentations altogether. And of course, because they're avoiding it, they never learn that they can actually handle it, which just makes that belief even stronger. What stood out to you about this whole cycle thing?
It's amazing how many everyday situations can trigger social anxiety. The book mentions things like meeting new people, initiating conversations, keeping those conversations going, public speaking, even using public restrooms or eating in front of others, or using technology to communicate, asserting yourself, dating, and work interactions. I mean, it's almost like you can't get away from it.
It's true, and I think what ties all of these situations together is that fear of judgment, that worry about how other people perceive us. It's like the spotlight shining on you, amplifying any flaw you think you have, and we often overestimate how much people are really noticing.
And then there's these, quote, safety behaviors, the things we do to try to minimize the anxiety in the moment, but they really just keep the cycle going. Things like avoiding eye contact, rehearsing conversations, over-preparing, checking things excessively, seeking reassurance from others, or even using substances.
It's ironic because these behaviors, they make you feel safer in the short term, but they prevent you from developing those real coping skills that you need. It's like using a crutch constantly instead of actually strengthening the muscle. So, for example, if you're always seeking reassurance from other people, you're just feeding that need for external validation instead of building up that confidence from within.
Oh, and let's not forget about those thinking traps the book talks about, those distorted thought patterns that just fuel the social anxiety fire.
Right. These mental patterns really do distort our perception. They make the perceived threat seem so much bigger than it needs to be.
So you've got things like catastrophizing, assuming the worst possible outcome will happen. Like, if you trip, you think everyone will laugh and you'll never want to go out in public again.
And then there's mind reading when you assume you know exactly what other people are thinking. For example, thinking that everyone thinks you're boring.
Right. And then there's fortune telling.
Yeah.
Like predicting that something bad is definitely going to happen. Oh, I'm going to mess this up for sure. It's like we're setting ourselves up to fail before we even start.
And don't forget about those rigid should statements. Things like, I should never be awkward. The book gives a ton of examples, and you'll probably laugh because you'll recognize yourself in some of them.
Ugh, these thinking traps are so sneaky. And often I think they come from these deep-seated beliefs we have about ourselves and others and the world in general. The book goes into these negative core beliefs like feeling unlovable, helpless, worthless.
Yeah, and these beliefs, a lot of times they come from things that happen in childhood, and they become like the lens through which we see everything.
Imagine someone who has this core belief that they're incompetent. They make a small mistake at work, and suddenly it's proof that they're not good enough. And that just fuels their social anxiety even more. It's really sad to see how these beliefs can hold people back.
It is, but the good news is that the book offers some real hope. It outlines a multifaceted approach to overcoming social anxiety.
It talks a lot about changing how you talk to yourself, moving away from that negative self-criticism, and instead trying to have this more compassionate, accepting, logical, and motivating inner dialogue. It's about being kinder to ourselves.
And then facing your fears is a big part of it, too. Gradually confronting those anxiety-provoking situations through exposure therapy, that can be incredibly effective.
We also shouldn't underestimate the power of positive psychology. Focusing on our strengths can help build our confidence and resilience. Instead of dwelling on what we see as our weaknesses, we can identify and really cultivate those qualities that empower us.
The book also emphasizes the importance of self-compassion and mindfulness. It's about accepting our self-flaws and learning to be present in the moment without judgment. It's definitely a practice, but it can make a huge difference.
It's really inspiring to learn about famous people who have publicly talked about their own struggles with social anxiety.
Definitely. The book mentions people like Barbara Streisand, Donny Osmond, and Shonda Rhimes. It kind of makes you realize you're not alone in this.
It's reassuring to know that even people who have accomplished so much also experience this. It shows that social anxiety doesn't have to define you or limit what you can achieve.
Exactly. It really highlights that social anxiety is a common human experience and that it's treatable.
That's such a powerful realization, isn't it? That you're not alone in this. Social anxiety is so common, but it can feel so isolating.
It really can. And it reminds me of what the book was saying about self-compassion. It's not about pretending the anxiety isn't there, but more about meeting it with understanding and kindness. I completely agree. We all have those moments, where we feel awkward or we doubt ourselves or we worry about what other people think. It's part of being human.
Right. The key is not letting those moments define us or dictate our actions.
Instead of criticizing ourselves for those imperfections, we can choose to offer ourselves that same kindness that we would offer a friend who is struggling.
And that ties in so well with the concept of mindfulness, which the book dives into quite deeply.
Mindfulness is all about cultivating this non-judgmental awareness of our present experience, our thoughts, our emotions, those physical sensations, even the environment around us.
So it's about creating some space between ourselves and that anxiety so we can actually observe those thoughts and feelings without getting completely swept away by them.
You got it. The book talks about a variety of mindfulness techniques like the body scan, progressive muscle relaxation, and even loving kindness meditation.
I've found those kinds of exercises to be super helpful for calming my own nervous system and shifting my attention away from those anxious thought patterns.
They're fantastic tools for developing a sense of presence, grounding, and inner peace. And having that foundation of calm can be so valuable when you're facing those social situations that tend to trigger anxiety.
And speaking of things that are valuable, the book also emphasizes self-care, which is so important for managing social anxiety and promoting overall well-being.
I always tell people self-care is not selfish. It's about nourishing your mind, your body, your spirit, so you can face life's challenges with more resilience.
The book recommends things like getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, regular exercise, engaging in activities that bring you joy, and spending time in nature.
All of those activities help regulate your nervous system, reduce stress, and boost your mood.
It's like making deposits into your emotional bank account so you have those resources available when those withdrawals inevitably come with social anxiety.
And sometimes we need a little extra support. The book makes a really important point about seeking professional guidance. It's a sign of strength, not weakness.
It's true. If you find that you're struggling to manage social anxiety on your own, reaching out to a qualified therapist can provide such invaluable support and guidance.
Therapy offers a safe space to really delve into those deep-rooted patterns and develop strategies that are tailored to your specific needs.
And the book even offers some resources for finding therapists who specialize in social anxiety and use evidence-based approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
CBT is particularly helpful for social anxiety because it focuses on recognizing and changing those negative thought patterns and unhelpful behaviors that keep the cycle going.
And it's so important to remember that overcoming social anxiety is not a linear journey. There will be setbacks and obstacles along the way.
Absolutely. The key is to approach those moments with self-compassion, learn from those experiences, and keep moving forward one step at a time.
Social Anxiety for Dummies is a fantastic resource for anyone who's dealing with these fears. It's full of practical techniques, relatable anecdotes, and insightful guidance to help navigate the path toward healing and transformation.
It really drives home the point that you're not alone in this struggle. Social anxiety is treatable, and you can have a more fulfilling and connected life.
This has been such a insightful deep dive into this topic. I'm really grateful for your expertise and insights, expert speaker.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you and our listeners. Remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The book goes into much more detail and offers lots of practical exercises, examples, and encouragement to support you on your journey to overcoming social anxiety.
It's a powerful reminder that social anxiety is a common and treatable human experience, and that hope, healing, and connection are always possible.
They certainly are. And to help our listeners continue on this journey, let's wrap up with a concise set of key takeaways from our deep dive into social anxiety for dummies.
That's a great idea. Having these nuggets of wisdom to refer back to can be so helpful. Okay, first and foremost, remember social anxiety is more than just shyness. It's a significant level of distress that can impact everyday life.
Our second key takeaway is to understand that social anxiety works in a cycle. Negative thoughts and beliefs fuel those anxious feelings, which then lead to avoidance behaviors. And those behaviors reinforce those original negative beliefs.
For our third point, let's remember to watch out for those subtle safety behaviors that we might do for temporary relief. Things like avoiding eye contact or rehearsing conversations over and over. Those actually get in the way of developing those genuine coping skills.
Our fourth takeaway is to be aware of those thinking traps, those distorted thought patterns like catastrophizing mind reading and fortune telling. Those just amplify your anxiety.
Fifth, we need to acknowledge the impact of those core beliefs that often develop in childhood. They shape how you see yourself and how you interact with others.
Our sixth point is so important to remember. Social anxiety is treatable. You are not alone, and there are effective strategies out there to help you manage and overcome this challenge.
Our seventh takeaway focuses on the Calm approach to changing how you talk to yourself. Cultivate a more compassionate, accepting, logical, and motivating internal dialogue. It's all about being kinder to yourself.
Our eighth point is to consider the potential of exposure therapy. Gradually facing those anxiety-provoking situations can help build your confidence and challenge those ingrained fears.
For our ninth takeaway, let's draw inspiration from the stories of successful people who have navigated their own journeys with social anxiety. Their stories show that social anxiety doesn't have to limit your potential.
And finally, our 10th point emphasizes the importance of self-care. Getting enough sleep, regular exercise, and doing things you enjoy can make a big difference in your overall well-being, including your ability to manage social anxiety.
This deep dive has been truly enlightening.
It really has. And there's so much more in social anxiety for dummies than we have time to cover. But one thing I do want to highlight for our listeners is this idea of cognitive reframing. These are techniques you can use to challenge those negative thoughts that often drive social anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's one thing to understand those thinking traps and that negative self-talk, but it's a whole other challenge to actually change those patterns when you're in the middle of it.
That's exactly it. That's where cognitive reframing comes in. It gives you this framework for actually confronting those unhelpful thoughts and replacing them with ones that are more balanced and realistic.
And the book does a fantastic job of laying out this framework using the acronym CAL. Compassionate, accepting, logical, and motivating. Such a great tool.
It really is. It perfectly captures the essence of cognitive reframing, guiding us to approach our thoughts with kindness, acceptance, rationality, and a focus on what truly matters.
It's like having this mental checklist that you can go through to transform those fear-based thoughts into something more helpful and empowering.
Exactly. Should we break down each element of PALM a bit more? I think it would give our listeners some concrete tools they can start practicing.
Love it. Let's start with C, compassionate. How do we actually apply compassion to our self-talk, especially when those critical voices start popping up?
Compassion is about treating ourselves with that same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a friend who is struggling.
It's about recognizing that we're all human. We all make mistakes, and we all have those moments of self-doubt.
And instead of beating ourselves up for those imperfections, we can choose to respond with gentleness and acceptance.
One thing the book suggests is asking yourself, what would I say to a friend who is feeling this way? Such a simple question, but so powerful.
Isn't it? It shifts the focus away from self-criticism and towards self-support. It helps us tap into that natural empathy that we so easily offer to others.
It's a great way to disrupt those negative thought spirals and start cultivating a more supportive inner dialogue.
All right, let's move on to A, accepting. What does it mean to approach our thoughts with acceptance, especially the ones that bring up anxiety or discomfort?
It's important to remember that acceptance doesn't mean we have to like those thoughts or agree with them. It just means recognizing that they're there without judgment or resistance.
Right. It's about understanding that thoughts are just thoughts. They're mental events that come and go. They're not these absolute truths that define who we are.
The book emphasizes that we don't have to believe every thought that pops into our heads. We can observe them, notice how they make us feel, and then choose how we want to respond.
It's like watching clouds drift by in the sky. We can appreciate their shapes and their movement and their fleeting nature without feeling the need to control them or become one with them.
That's a perfect analogy. It's a powerful way to detach from those anxious thoughts and give ourselves some breathing room mentally.
Now for illogical. How do we bring logic into our thinking, especially when anxiety tends to distort our perceptions and make our fears seem much bigger?
It's about taking a step back and examining those thoughts objectively, gathering evidence and challenging any assumptions that might be fueling that anxiety.
Ask yourself, is this thought based on facts or is it based on feelings?
The book also encourages us to think about the actual probability of our fears coming true.
Often anxiety tricks us into overestimating the likelihood of those negative outcomes, which then creates this sense of impending doom that isn't really grounded in reality.
So applying logic helps us assess those fears in a more realistic way and gain a more balanced perspective.
Like a detective piecing together clues and gathering evidence to figure out what's really going on.
All right, and finally, let's dive into motivating. How can we frame our self-talk in a way that inspires us to take action and face our fears, even when anxiety is telling us to hide?
Motivating self-talk is about connecting with our values, our goals, and those steps we can take to create the life we want.
It's about reminding ourselves why this is important to us, what truly matters, and what's possible when we choose courage over comfort.
One thing the book suggests is asking, what's one small step I can take today to move towards my goal?
Exactly. It's about breaking down those seemingly impossible challenges into smaller, more manageable actions, celebrating those small wins and holding on to that sense of hope and possibility.
Like a coach giving a pep talk to their team, reminding them of their strengths, their capabilities, and that victory that awaits them.
This CALM acronym is such a fantastic tool. It provides this practical and empowering framework for transforming our self-talk and navigating those difficult moments with more grace and resilience.
It really is one of the most valuable takeaways from Social Anxiety for Dummies, something that listeners can start practicing right away to gradually shift those negative patterns and start building that more supportive internal dialogue.
And it pairs so beautifully with all the other strategies we've been talking about: mindfulness exposure therapy, self-compassion, and building a strong support system.
Absolutely. All of these things work together to create this toolkit for managing social anxiety and creating a more fulfilling and connected life.
This deep dive has been such a profound exploration of social anxiety. We've learned so much from Social Anxiety for Dummies and from your wealth of experience expert speaker.
It's been an honor to share this journey with you and with our listeners. Remember, this is just the beginning. The book goes into so much more depth and has lots of practical exercises and relatable stories and encouragement to support you on your path to overcoming social anxiety.
It's a powerful reminder that social anxiety is a common and treatable human experience, and that hope and healing and connection are always possible.
They are. And before we go, let me leave you with one final thought. What if, instead of dreading judgment, we started to see social situations as opportunities to practice kindness? Kindness to ourselves and to others.
Wow, what a beautiful reframing. Approaching those interactions with a heart full of compassion instead of a mind full of fear, that's a real game changer.
It is. And with that, I'll let you explore the book further and embark on your own journey of healing and transformation.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, may you find courage in your heart, peace in your mind, and genuine connection in your life.